Thank you. I'm just waiting for the attendees to load. Okay. There we go. And just a reminder for those that are joining us, our public comment speaker form is available on our website at ebce.org. You'll click on About EBCE Plus, and right above the public meetings site for this meeting, you'll see the link to sign up for public comment. And currently we have 4 people signed up for public comment.
And Cynthia, I know, was planning to attend, but I don't see her yet as an attendee. When she shows up, can we remember to move her over? Because
oh, so we can't because she's calling in, but I can definitely leave her microphone available.
Okay. Yeah, because I know, I thought that in the past you've moved over, but I guess I don't see her here just yet. So
you see a representative from SEIU though.
Oh, you do? Okay, so that could be Cynthia. All right, let's go ahead and get the Monday, October 19th, 2020 Community Advisory Committee meeting. I call the meeting to order, 6:03. Can we have a roll call, please?
Okay. Let me pull that up. Apologies. Okay. Member Landry is expected. So I'll go Eldred.
Present.
Pacheco.
Here.
Padilla.
Here.
Frank.
Present.
Sutter.
Present.
Got it right, Jane. I apologize, Frank.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Sorry. Okay, you do not have a quorum, but we are expecting 1 more member.
I thought Ernie was here. Isn't that our 5th?
Did Ernie respond?
Yeah.
Yes, maybe not loud enough. Hello, yes, sir.
There we go. Perfect. Then we do have a quorum. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So we're going to move on to item C2, which is public comments. So this item is reserved for persons wishing to address our committee on anything EBCE related that we don't have otherwise on our agenda. I've heard that we have 4 speaker slips.
Yes, I have Jessica Tovar, Marissa Mitchell, and Alita Dupree.
Great, thank you. Can you call them and open their mics, please, in that order?
Jessica Tovar, your microphone is available.
Thank you. Jessica Tovar, East Bay Clean Power Alliance, just sharing that the Alliance had submitted a letter last Thursday around our position. And, you know, what we're really focused on is making sure that we keep nuclear energy out of our East Bay Community Energy Program. And specifically in this case, out of Brilliant 100. So we are proposing some alternatives for continuing Brilliant 100 for the cities that would like to continue using that product, carbon-free product, but perhaps keeping nuclear out by subsidizing the $3 million that it costs for the Brilliant 100 to be used by the cities that are enrolled in it. Other ideas have come from allied organizations like the Sierra Club, of which we are different, but also focus on keeping nuclear out of the mix completely, and we also support that. And also in our letter, we just reiterate that it was talked about that back in 2018, that East Bay Community Energy would keep coal and nuclear out of the mix, out of the program, and emphasize renewable energy and other carbon-free energy. Another thing that we highlighted in our letter was the state of nuclear in community choice programs in California, and that the majority of community choice programs have rejected offers of nuclear energy. And so in total, it's about 75% of the nuclear that was rejected by community choice programs. I believe 3 community choice programs make up about 25%, have accepted the nuclear energy. And just to note that some community choice programs have created a policy to ban nuclear from their programs. And we want to do the best that we can to keep nuclear out of our program, because we do want to continue focusing on increasing renewable energy, doing better than PG&E, doing better than the state mandates, and overall, continue to offer the East Bay area the clean energy that was promised from the very beginning. So on behalf of East Bay Clean Power Alliance, we want to just again emphasize to keep nuclear out of the program, and noting that a rate stabilization fund was created, and we should do the same for Brilliant 100 and keep the nuclear out. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Who's next?
Marissa Mitchell. Marissa Mitchell, if you could please raise your, there you are. There you go, your microphone is on.
Great, thank you very much. My name is Marissa Mitchell and I represent Intersect Power and the Aramis Renewable Energy Project. And I understand that although East Bay Community Energy's approval of a 25 megawatt contract related to this project, the Aramis Renewable Energy Project, is not on the advisory committee's agenda this evening, I wanted to relay some project information in case the committee or members of the public have questions about the project or would like more information or have heard anything about the project. Really quickly, the proposed Aramis Solar Plus Storage project includes 100 megawatts of solar and 100 megawatts of a 4-hour duration battery storage system. It's proposed to be located in the North Livermore Valley, right here in Alameda County. Clean Power San Francisco is proposing to take a portion of the project, and East Bay Community Energy is proposing to take the remainder of resource adequacy capacity from the project. The project has been designed to protect water quality, visual resources, agricultural resources, and we're also planning on planting pollinator attracting plants at the project site under the arrays and as a visual screen for the nearby residents. We're proposing to host a community apiary that will be open to the public to learn how to do beekeeping. And we've also proposed to dedicate a public hiking trail for educational opportunities for STEM coursework for members of the public and local schools. The project is compliant with East Bay Community Energy's community benefit standards and has committed to provide $250,000 donation in rooftop PV systems to local nonprofit groups by working with our partner Tipping Point. That's all I had to say. Let me know if you have any additional questions about the project.
Thank you, Marissa. I very much appreciate you coming on during public period. Our CAC agenda is necessarily limited at times. And so this was not one that made it, but I really appreciate you coming and telling us about it here. And I encourage any member of the CAC or the board or of the public to listen in on Wednesday, where I'm sure she'll provide a much longer presentation.
Thank you.
Stephanie, do we have one more?
Yes, Alita Dupree, your microphone is available.
Thank you, Chair Mary Sutter and members of the committee. Alita Dupree for the record. My pronouns are she and her. And today I'm going to talk about general EBCE stuff. I am, as I've said before, concerned about the high costs of electricity. And I know that you are doing a lot of work to try to bring that down. Certainly, I hope that someday EBCE will become a municipal utility district, and then you'll have the oversight for the costs of delivering the electricity to the people. Storage is absolutely essential. It should be about buy low and sell high. When I see electricity prices going negative, or sometimes very cheap, less than $10 a megawatt hour, that's the time to get it. In Chicago and maybe even all of Illinois, There is an hourly electricity pricing program that is available for residential customers. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but customers can take advantage of electricity when it is very inexpensive. So if I know when I can get really inexpensive electricity, I can do a lot of heavy use things such as cooking. That uses a lot of electricity. Right now I'm averaging 25 to 30 kilowatt hours a day. When it gets really hot in the summer, I'm pushing close to 50. That's because I run an all electric home. And if I had a washer dryer, I'd be using more than that. If I had an electric car, I'd be using even more. It's all renewable. So it's a good thing to use more electricity as long as it is renewable. So we really have to develop more renewables and storage, because I'm seeing that the price of solar and wind is declining. And so I think it should be our mission to grab as much of that as possible and to be forceful voices in rate making. When you buy electricity at the same price for 24 hours a day, all you're paying is simply an average that's calculated over a period of time, and that is okay. But many of us would like to have more options. And so there's different programs that can be tailored for different needs. So I reiterate to you, renewables and storage across the board, so we can grab the inexpensive electricity so it doesn't go out to waste when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing. Thank you.
Thank you, Alita. Do we have anybody else, Stephanie?
We do not, but I do see 2 dial-in callers. Cynthia, are you on the line? Just checking to see if Cynthia has joined us.
Hi. Yes, I am here, and I seem to, for whatever reason, have problem getting on the Zoom meeting right now. I don't know. But I am here. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, perfectly fine. Just wanted the record to show that you were on the meeting now. Thank you.
Okay. Can you give me, because I'm on 2 different devices, would you give me the meeting ID so I can see if I can get on, please, if that's appropriate? Or
Sure, absolutely.
I'm ready.
It's 820
65 065
36 2447.
2447. Okay, let's see if I can join. Oh, I think, okay, great. I'm sorry, folks. Okay, thank you.
That's okay. Hey, Cynthia, this is Mary. We are in the public comment period. And
Okay.
I remember there was an item that you wanted to bring up during this period. Are you ready to discuss it?
As soon as the Zoom loads up, yes. I do, or I can just wait for the Zoom to come on the iPhone because I'm using 2 devices. I can get the letter right now if you want. Yeah. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, it would be great to have you present
okay.
during this time, like we talked about.
Right,
Were you
right.
planning to read the letter or just indicate what the letter is about?
Well, I might abbreviate some of the paragraphs. Hold on, I'll get it. Just it'll take me 1 second.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And during this time, Chair Setter, I do have Blair Beekman signed up now for public comment as well.
Okay. Let's give Cynthia a second to get back
Okay.
on the line. Okay,
Yes.
Cynthia, please go ahead.
Okay. So we have SEIU Local 1021 is actually this has been adopted by the Alameda County COPE Committee of SEIU Local 1021. And in summary, SEIU Local 1021 opposes the use of nuclear energy by the East Bay Community Energy Agency for 2021. and we are opposed to it. I think the letter should have been submitted in everyone's packet. That's what I asked. And we are opposed to it for a number of reasons, which is in the resolution, because of radioactive waste, because of national security issues, and potential accidents. But I can actually read it. It's not a big thing. The Alameda County COPE Committee of SEIU Local 1021, and by the way, in the East Bay, we are 15,000 union members strong, is concerned about the prospect of the East Bay Community Energy adding PG&E nuclear energy to its energy options for the following reasons. One, radioactive waste. A major environmental concern related to nuclear power is the creation of radioactive waste, such as uranium mill tailings, spent used reactor fuel, and other radioactive waste. These materials can remain radioactive and dangerous to human health for thousands of years, because the half-life is, as everyone knows, is very long. National security. Nuclear power plants are a potential target for terrorist operations. An attack could cause major explosions, putting population centers at risk, as well as ejecting dangerous radioactive material into the atmosphere and surrounding region. Accidents. In addition to the risk posed by terrorist attacks, human error and natural disasters can lead to dangerous and costly accidents. The 1986 Chernobyl disaster in Ukraine led to the deaths of 30 employees in the initial explosion and resulted in a variety of negative health effects on thousands across Russia and Eastern Europe. A massive tsunami in 2011 caused 3 nuclear meltdowns at a power plant in Fukushima, Japan. Also, another reason is nuclear proliferation. The existence of nuclear energy facilities increases the likelihood of proliferation of nuclear weapons. A nuclear fuel has nuclear fuel and technologies become globally available, the risk of these falling into the wrong hands is increasingly present. For the stated reasons that I just mentioned, radioactive waste, nuclear proliferation, national security, and the potential for accidents, I understand that these are worst-case scenarios, but just like the recent fires that have damaged 4 million acres in California, we need to be prepared for the worst-case scenarios also. So for these reasons, the Alameda County COPE Committee of SEIU Local 1021 approved the following resolution on September 28th, 2020. And again, SEIU Local 1021, that is our official position, not my position, opposes the use of nuclear energy by the East Bay Community Energy Agency for 2021. Peter Albert, co-chair, Alameda County COPE Committee, Andrea Malaki, Co-Chair, Alameda County COPE Committee, Deborah Pearson, Secretary, Alameda County COPE Committee, Martha Hawthorne, Chair, Climate Justice Committee, and I am on both the COPE Committee and also the Climate Justice Committee, as well as an executive board member for SEIU Local 1021.
Great, thank you, Cynthia. Stephanie, can you remind me, did this letter get sent to the board?
It was not. That was not the request for this item. So it was not sent to the board because we were still talking about how it was going to be presented here at the CAC.
Okay, can I request that it be sent to the board, please?
Absolutely. And on that note, Peter Albert is also on the line for public comment. So I'll have Peter go prior to Blair.
Okay, thank you. Peter?
Hey, Peter, you can unmute yourself.
There we go. Do you have a participants window that we can see or not?
I'm sorry, what?
Sorry.
Usually on a Zoom call, there's a participants window on the right side of the screen where you can see who's on the call and you can change your name or whatever, stuff like that. Do you have that?
Yes, it depends on which device you're viewing from. Are you on a PC or a phone?
I'm on a desktop.
A desktop? Okay, you should be able to click over the Zoom and see, I'm sorry, you wouldn't be able to see the participants as an attendees, but you should be able to see a bar of the panelists.
Oh, okay.
Currently, you should be seeing the share screen with the timer.
So I just wanted to support Cynthia's statement. When she read the letter, she mentioned the signatures at the bottom. One of those is me. We have a political committee for Alameda County for our union, and Cynthia's been a member of that committee for about 10 years. I've been an officer of the committee for 13 years. And so I have worked with Cynthia on issues at the EBCE back when they first created the steering committee at a small group of 40 people. I was an alternate to Cynthia, so I've been trying to stay in the loop on the issues. And so I just wanted to repeat that our COPE committee in September voted to support this resolution, which Cynthia has presented to you. That's all.
Great, thank you. So do we have Blair?
Blair Beekman, your microphone is available.
Hi, thank you. I would like to also thank you for the report I just heard. It was really nice. You've heard a lot of people commenting over the past few months about what East Bay Community Energy can be and what it should be. The previous person just mentioned, it reminded me of ideas, that the study process for the community energy for the Bay Area has been in the makings for, at least 10 years now. And it's been really good studies, a really good study process that originated from the East Bay. I think East Bay Mud may have had something to do with it, but there were really good study practices that were being passed along to all the other community energies of the Bay Area. And, for ourselves to really consider, this has to be the time to consider the steps, how exactly to leave nuclear power. Fully leave nuclear power and all of its financing and its expenditures and its selling power. How do we step away from that? And it's not just, Diablo Canyon may be ending by 2023. I would like to know what plans are after 2023, if that can start to be talked about a bit more. PG&E is wonderful at saying we're ending things by 2023. What is going to be happening after that? That's when I think that people have mentioned here that there's going to be talk of, the smaller nuclear ideas, fusion and, the small reactors. And so how do we step away from that, all of that? And so good luck in that process. And also good luck that, you know, the study session process and just the overall, you know, the idea of with nuclear power, there can be acceptable losses of mass numbers of people. I think that's another issue that needs to be considered. We're in this time of COVID that's doing certain things positive and well, but how we leave the era of COVID, we have to address what is our future of positive sustainability on a mass scale. You know, we can't keep giving ourselves COVID and 9/11s every 10 years. We have to practice positive sustainability. And that means leaving nuclear power. That means learning to trust each other locally and talking to each other, and that builds trust. So, you know, good luck how we build our future at this time. This is really how we start to build it now. And I had one other item to mention with 25 seconds. Me being originally from San Jose, I wanted to quickly mention that they have a project called Hummingbird Energy, which is meant as storage for solar. I've reported before that they were converting a natural gas plant substation to do this. I don't know if they're going to use natural gas. I think they want to try to convert it somehow, and it's long-term storage stuff. It's interesting work, and I thought I'd mention it here. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Blair. Stephanie, do we have any other public comment?
We have no other speakers for public comment.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to move us then to our next item, which is item C3, approval of minutes from September 14th. Do we have anyone that would like to motion?
I move approval. This is Monica.
I second. This is Anna Olivia.
Great. Okay, I think we need a roll call vote on this since we're virtual.
Thank you. Since it's roll call, I will still repeat the folks that have made the motion. Eldred,
Yes.
Landry,
I'm sorry, I just stepped away. What are we doing now?
we're
Approval
approving
of
the
minutes.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Pacheco,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Sutter.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Great. We'll move on to item C4, which is the CAC chair report. I actually have nothing to report today, so we're going to move on to item C5, and we'll see if we can make up some of our time here. Item C5 is the CAC guide and appointment process update. This is an action item for the CAC. It is also an action item for the board. And so we're hoping to hear from staff that will describe the updates to the current appointment process. And we will want to give our thoughts back to the board on these changes. Stephanie, who's presenting for us?
We should have Nick on the line, and I'll bring up the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay.
While we're bringing it up, let me just start by saying this presentation and the recommendations that are being brought to the board are started as a set of staff recommendations that were developed in consultation with individual board members. And then this was discussed at the executive committee, and the executive committee provided significant input on these recommendations. And so now the executive committee voted to bring forward these recommendations to the full board for ratification on Wednesday. So the primary recommendations here really relate to updating the size and orientation of the CAC to ensure representation on the CAC across the service territory. So let's go to the table on the next page, please. there are, and so that the first step there is moving towards a specific allocation of CAC seats to specific, we call them zones or parts of the service territory. So the first table is the proposal. The second table below that is the current makeup of the CAC. The recommendation is to, one, increase the size of the CAC from 9 to 12 members, and then allocate those seats across 5 distinct zones, and then create 2 full at-large seats. In addition to the creation of these at-large seats, the executive committee recommended creating 5 alternate seats. Each alternate seat, though, would be allocated to a zone, such that, say, in the North Zone, where you have Albany, Berkeley, Oakland, Emeryville, and Piedmont, there would be 1 alternate for that area, and that alternate would need to be a resident of one of those 5 jurisdictions. And so that follows through for the 5 geographic zones. No at-large alternates, though, are in the recommendation. I think, generally the table should be pretty straightforward, though. So 3 seats to the North Zone, 1 seat to the East Zone, 3 seats to the South Zone, 2 seats in the Central Zone, and 1 seat to San Joaquin County, which is currently Tracy, and then 2 at-large seats. These at-large seats the appointments for the at-large seats would be slightly different than the appointments for the rest of the seats, in that the board, the executive committee is recommending that the Council of Mayors develop a list of candidates and recommend candidates for the at-large seats, whereas the allocated seats, well, it would really be the role of the board members from those communities to help to recruit candidates, when there's an open seat. So that's the primary sort of update. Those are the primary updates associated with that, though. The recommendation is to move to a uniform 2-year term for all CAC seats, while maintaining the current 8-year limit on total years on the body. Part of the reason for moving to a 2-year term is that if there is movement by a member of the CAC during their 2-year term, say from Fremont, and they move to, say, Oakland, if there's not an open seat in Oakland, at the end of their term, that seat would then revert back to Fremont. So to ensure that each part of the service territory continues to always have, as much as possible, the full contingent of CAC members. I think that is that.
Great, thank you, Nick. I'm going to ask for any public comment before I open it up to the CAC members for discussion. Do we have any public comment?
Yes, I have Jessica Tovar.
Great, thank you, Jessica.
There we go. Jessica, you have your microphone.
Okay, thank you. I was speaking.
Uh-oh.
It's okay. So one of the things I wanted to add, first of all, I want to appreciate that there is a proposal on the table. It's taken some time, I know, to get to this point, but we would like to see that the diversity of folks within the Community Advisory Committee be more intersectional and reflect the myriad of criteria that was discussed back in 2017 or whenever it was, years back. And, just to add that aside from geographic diversity, there's gender, age, ethnicity, race, people who represent like the low income community, working class communities.
Jessica, can I ask you to hold for just a second? Stephanie, we're seeing you taking notes and not
Okay.
the timer.
Oh.
I know that's not usual, so if you could at least point it out. Go ahead, Jessica. Thank you.
Sure. So I was just speaking to the other points of diversity, which is gender, age, ethnicity, race, folks who represent low income communities, working class communities, but also the different sectors. For example, folks who would represent social justice community, environmental justice, renewable energy advocates, the labor community, workforce development, minority and small businesses, community economic development, the environmental community, housing and land use. So just to support that when we talk about diversity within the Community Advisory Committee, it's a multitude of different types of sectors, of people, of classes of people. One thing that we didn't name back then that I really want to emphasize now more than ever is having a member of the disability justice community, and perhaps even like a senior community, because I think that, when you have people from these different types of backgrounds, you will have expertise in those different backgrounds to contribute to this conversation about energy in our community moving forward. And it is because of that background that we have come to this point of creating a community choice program that emphasizes, local development, community benefits, and all the good things that we have advocated for within this program. In order to continue that robust conversation, you need different types of members of the community, so as not to just limit yourself to geographical diversity, but also to acknowledge that people have in the past been displaced too. So people don't just choose to move somewhere, and things are looking different again because of this pandemic. So I'm just putting it out there that there are other forces too that need to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Do we have any other public comment?
There are no other speakers for this item.
Great. So for our folks, I see Ernie has his hand raised, and then Anna Olivia. Ernie?
Sure. Yeah, I see no problem with this geographical allocation that's proposed, but I am also too concerned that we don't in any way give up the other diversity qualifications or considerations that we already built into it. And so I guess, I mean, even with those built into it, we're still somewhat lacking in the full diversity. And if we don't include that, I have no doubt that things will get even less diverse. So I guess I would ask, there's none in the staff discussion. Is it being proposed that the other the diversity aspects are taken away, or how do you, or Nick, how do you see that getting folded in with the geographical allocation?
Mary, would you like me to answer that?
Yes, please.
None of the other parameters are being changed. So we're not removing anything. I think in the past, those factors have been on the application and have been part of the board's review process. So that's not changing. What we're just doing now is allocating specific seats to specific geographies. All the other decision criteria remain with the board and remain unchanged.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anna Olivia? Actually, before Anna Olivia, Ernie, did you have anything else? Nope.
No, that answers my question. Just I would ask that is said to the board in discussion, since it's not in the actual staff report, just so some of our newer board members are aware of that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Anna Olivia, and then Monica.
Thank you.
And I'm in the queue also.
Great, Cynthia, I'll get you after Monica.
Thank you for this. It really is nice to see this come out. I know that a lot of work has gone into it, and the allocation of seats by geography is really important. On the Transportation Commission, we have a certain allocation by geography and then a stated allocation based on a list. Frankly, the list Jessica gave is better and more inclusive than the one I had come up with, so we'll just go with that one. But I would like to add the representation of CARE, FARA, and medical baseline customers, regardless of geography, because again, a lot of our community doesn't enjoy stability, and the potential of adding something like an equity subcommittee or something like that to really take the time to look at some of these proposals coming forward now that we have been established for a while, to take a look at some of the things so that we can report back to the CAC like we do on the other boards and say, this is how, this is the way that some of these things look at from an equity perspective. It's a solid, I'm definitely in support of this. I do have a question about the number of seats being even as opposed to odd. We had kept the number of seats odd in the past to avoid a tie, and on occasion reserving the chair's vote to break a tie if it came up. So I'm just wondering what the thought process is around that.
The number 12 was recommended by the executive committee. So initially the staff recommendation had been to maintain the current number of seats and allocate them just across the zones, and then have the at-large seats sort of continue to be the alternates. And so but then in discussion, there was interest in adding another seat to represent the South Zone. So Fremont, Union City, and Newark. So that would take it to 10 rather. And then upon further discussion, there was interest in, well, then let's also create 2 at-large members. So there was not a lot of discussion of even versus odd from a voting dynamic. I think the thought was 12 was the right number of total without thinking about the vote.
That would be the only thing I would add, is that it had intentionally been odd in the past so that the chair could vote to break a tie if necessary. But thank you.
Great, thank you. Monica and then Cynthia.
Yeah, so this is not something that I've been following very closely, but my question is about expanding the size. It does seem to me, I've been here since the very beginning, and my sense is that while we've attracted people to the Community Advisory Committee, we've had a hard time getting them to show up to meetings and to stay engaged, and some of them have even dropped off before their terms are over. So I'm just worried that if we make it a 12-member committee, that we'll have an even harder time getting a quorum. And unless someone can tell me that there's a huge demand to be on this committee and that that's not going to be an issue in the future, I think that's a too large of a size of a committee and not very manageable.
One request that was made by Vice Chair Martinez was to formally move the CAC meetings to all virtual going forward. So to ensure that we always support Zoom. That's not being brought forward to the board, nor is being brought to the CAC, but I think that was partially sort of recommended, and this is something the board wants to apply to their subcommittees as well. That was partially to ensure greater participation. I think in general, it's easier to participate in this kind of a meeting when you're able to sign in from home and not worry about, gosh, I got to drive from work to Hayward or wherever having the meeting and then make it back home. So our hope is that maintaining Zoom-based meetings will allow for greater interest and ongoing participation.
And would you say that there is kind of like, is there a lot of interest to be on this committee?
I can't say one way or the other. We have not been getting significant numbers of applications, though we have not gone through the formal process of opening the application process because we've been waiting to make these changes. So we didn't want to say take applicants, and get lots of applicants, say from Oakland or Berkeley, recognizing that currently we have 3 members of the CAC from those communities. And so create a dynamic where there's a lot of interest from one community, but we're not able to bring on more members, more CAC members from those communities. So we really wanted to finalize these guidelines. So we'll see. And certainly we'll be reporting back to the CAC here and the board as we get a sense of the level of interest.
Well, I would certainly support the diversification based on geography and based on some of the other criteria that public has raised, like Jessica Tavar. But would just caution, or maybe like you said, let's assess what the interest is. If there's not sufficient interest, I would hope there's some flexibility to go back down to 9 members so that we can ensure that we have a quorum and can do the business that we need to do.
I will note that there's no issue with quorum. So I think, and Stephanie, please confirm this, but until such time as we seat somebody in a seat for a first time, there's not. So on Wednesday, we're not automatically going to have 12 seats and thus no longer have a quorum. I think somebody has to be seated for the first time for it to count against your quorum. So for instance, we have 12 members. If we're only able to bring on 10, shall we say, until such time as we get those 2 more, those seats do not count against your quorum.
That is correct. Thank you, Nick.
So that's at least something that hopefully we will fill those 12 seats quickly, but at least from a near-term quorum perspective, having the possibility of 12 seats does not reduce the likelihood of being able to meet quorum.
Yeah, and just having worked for a local government that had a very large city council, you can expect to have much longer meetings, by the way, when you have that many people. So yeah.
Anything else, Monica?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Cynthia?
Yes, I just wanted to comment on the last point briefly before I get into my own comment. I just want to say, Nick, I would like to see, and I know this is not an action item tonight, but for those folks, when we are out of the COVID period, whenever that is, perhaps people that cannot attend the meeting, in person, that we have the option of, Zoom or a call-in number. I think that, some entities function that way. So that's another possibility, having in person combined with Zoom. I don't know, how difficult that would be, but that would be, at least something that I would like to see considered. Now, on the CAC guide and appointment process update, in general, I support the recommendations. I would like to see the language that Jessica mentioned regarding, diversity. If we could add a brief paragraph, speaking to, labor, workforce development, other diverse groups, disability, gender, age, all the factors. There was about 10 of them that Jessica mentioned, I don't know if that could be memorialized in this document. I remember in the past seeing something like that. I don't think it was part of this document. Maybe if it was part of the application process, but I would like to see that memorialized somewhere, preferably in this document. We don't, it doesn't have to go in great detail, but I think it should be, mentioned here.
Thank you, Cynthia. Anything else? Nope. Okay, I'm going to go back to Anna Olivia, and then I have a comment, and then after I comment, I'd like to have us come up with a motion. Anna Olivia.
Sweet. I was actually going to do the motion part, but one thing that I forgot to add was I got feedback from the board when I was chair, and this had come up before. There were multiple members of the board who were never informed that their constituents had applied, and they would have wanted to know that they were successful in their outreach efforts and that we're getting that engagement, and wanted to know when those people had applied. So even if the staff doesn't recommend their inclusion, I would like to see that the board does get a list of all of those who have applied and the various factors that they represent. Just so our board knows. It's a good transparency thing. And I will wait to make the motion until you speak, Mary.
The question that I had for you, Nick, I support this proposal as it stands. It's not clear to me about the timing in terms of when the 2 years are going to start, given the board here. I feel it's best when you have a committee like this that half roll on and half stay on, half roll off and half stay on. So you have a culture of teaching half of the group. If not, you don't want to start from zero every 2 years. And so it's not clear to me if this is set up to enable that type of transitioning of folks or not.
So the terms are 2 years, but the reappointments are for 8 years. So I think
let's say you choose not to re-up, and
so I think the point would be if everyone who at the end of their current on the current CAC at the end of their 2 year term chose not to re-up. I think Stephanie has the numbers handy. So yes, you're right. Over the next less than 2 years, we could see, total turnover relative to where we are today. I mean, I think our hope would be that there would be some our current members who want to stay beyond that 2 year term and continue perhaps serve a second 2 year term. And so because we are appointing,
it's not clear then.
May I add to that? So as each member is terming out, they have the opportunity to apply for reappointment or their term is up. And so it would be staggered depending on when people are rolling off with their 2 year term.
That was the point I was making, Stephanie,
Yes.
is that I think we currently have 7 seated members, correct?
Correct. We have 6.
6 seated members? So we have
6 seated members, yep.
6 seated members.
And their terms are currently staggered. So as their terms come up, we would be appointing to those seats becoming available. So there is a rotation.
The point what I was getting to is that we would actually, because we're appointing 6 new members, you're naturally going to have a staggering.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And within the 6, there's already a staggering as well. So it naturally is going to happen.
Okay. Anna Olivia? You're on mute.
Yeah, I just had mute issues. I would like to move that we support this appointment process and ask that the chair or vice chair, whoever is presenting at the board meeting, includes a verbal summary of the importance of expressing the need for diversity factors and transparency in who has applied. That was a little awkward, but I hope it worked okay.
So as I understand it, it is that the CAC supports the proposal as the appointment process updates. And I, as chair, because I'll be at the Wednesday meeting, will summarize what we've heard today about inclusion and diversity and transparency in terms of the number of people who have applied in a location and having the board member get back to them. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ernie.
I would like to offer a friendly amendment.
Sure.
I would like to see, and it's probably not absolutely necessary, but I would like to see a sentence there or two about, you know, diversity and inclusion in the application. I think can Nick respond to this? Is it part of the application process, Nick, that spells out the various constituency groups?
Yes, it's in the application. So there would be an indication by the applicant of whether they represent the constituencies that were defined really pre-formation of the CAC.
Okay.
So that is there.
Okay. And
at this point, we can't change the staff memo. So we can't add or easily add new items, but certainly board members can make
I can definitely provide that. I mean, I can provide that as my summary. And
okay.
Okay. So any other comments? If not, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. Eldred?
Yes.
Landry?
Yes.
Pacheco?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Sutter?
Yes.
Padilla? I apologize.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
Great. And before we go on to the next item, Jessica, are you still on? Is she still here? If not, I'll get in touch with her. I'd like to have you email me that list that you had, so I can make sure that I have all of those various levels stated. All right. So we are moving on to item C6. This is an informational item for us. This is a discussion of the extension of Brilliant 100 option to January 31, 2021. For those who haven't seen the item on the board agenda, it is currently a consent item. Whether or not any of the board members choose to pull it off for further discussion is unclear. They always have that opportunity. But I have this specifically as an informational item for us, just so people understand what's happening at this point with this rate. And who's presenting for us?
Hi, Chair Sutter. This is Annie Henderson. I don't have a presentation.
It's fine.
But I can just sort of note the highlights in the staff report. So I think you already noted the most important one, which is we are requesting the board to approve an extension of the Brilliant 100 product as it currently stands, 100% carbon-free, with carbon-free resources being RPS renewables and large hydro, and at cost parity with PG&E. We're asking them to extend that through the end of January so that there is a little bit more time to both provide informational presentations to the board and allow for board discussion with their city councils, and then come back to make a decision. And then we would implement in February with an effective date of February 1, based on whatever decisions were made through the end of this year by our board. And those decisions that we're looking at is in this next board meeting, asking them to extend Brilliant 100 as it currently stands to January 31st, asking them then to vote on the Brilliant 100 options, which are currently maintain a status quo through a subsidy, continue with Brilliant 100 as it currently stands, but at a premium, or get rid of Brilliant 100. And then with a fourth option being get rid of Brilliant 100, but add a parity carbon-free product that could potentially include nuclear power. So that's what we'd be asking them to do in November. And then in December, the board would be asked to vote on how the various jurisdictions, either what products those various jurisdictions want offered in their area, with the idea being that if there is a nuclear product, there may be jurisdictions that don't want that offered to their territory. So this is step one in a multi-step process, aiming to really balance the need for discussion, information, but also reacting to the fact that Brilliant 100 is not currently priced in a way that is sustainable.
Great, thank you, Annie. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Sorry, I'm talking muted. I have Jessica Tovar and Alita Dupree.
Great, thank you. Jessica, please. Then Alita.
Would you mind taking the other speaker before me, please?
Sure.
Sorry.
Alita?
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you, Chair Mary Sutter. Alita Dupree for the record. So the board should approve an extension of Brilliant 100 to buy us some more time to consider our options. Going forward, I think every rate class needs to be sustainable and based on the underlying costs of the electricity that is used for it. I'm not a particularly big fan of cross-subsidization, though I think that you can't avoid it totally. And certainly for some equity reasons, a little bit of subsidization might be merited. But certainly, I think for our brand, it's essential to have a 100% carbon-free product that is priced at parity with PG&E, because if our products become more expensive than PG&E, we risk losing customers, and that would erode the foundation of what EBCE is all about, which is community power. Obviously, a value proposition has to be kept because for some people, they're price sensitive and all they're really thinking about is how much does this power cost? I would advocate that we not buy nuclear power at all. And I'm not going to go into all of the nuclear specific reasons about why we should not buy nuclear power. You've heard it all before on more than one occasion. And this issue is coming up again because the previous authorization for nuclear power only extends through the end of the year. So that's why the board is looking at this again. So I guess if various cities and towns would like to buy nuclear power, that's their prerogative. But I don't really see people out there in the world saying, I want to buy some nuclear power, just in the sense of saying, well, I'm going to buy some gourmet prime rib. I don't think that's it at all. Some cities are nuclear free zones, so they're going to say no. I would guess that cities might want to buy nuclear power because of the cost, but we should stay away from nuclear power because every kilowatt hour of nuclear we buy is one less opportunity to buy a kilowatt hour of renewable. So I look forward to us extending the current program and considering our options carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Alita. Jessica, are you ready at this point?
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you so much. So East Bay Clean Power has a concern about section 1 in the resolution that the board is being asked to approve on Wednesday. And that section includes a phrase that's, quote, with a renewable energy content equivalent to the current renewable portfolio standard and with remaining power being supplied by large hydroelectricity for a total of 100% carbon free. I guess it's unquote. We want to know if that means that the renewable content for Brilliant 100 would be reduced to this California RPS Renewable Portfolio Standard requirement for 2020 of 33%. If so, we would love to get some comparison of the average price for renewables versus the large hydro. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Do we have any other public comment? Nope.
Blair Beekman.
Oh, Blair, okay. Blair, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Made it. The old inexperienced person here. Thank you. Thank you for what I'm learning, and you've come to decisions, and I guess it's just a sigh of relief at this point. It's reasonable, it seems, and thank you. I should also, this seems a time just to thank yourselves for, it's been a really crazy year, and you've all made really incredible efforts to keep things sane. And so people like me can feel like there's a sense of normalcy, and I'm allowed to ask about decisions and what can be our future based on how hard you guys work for things to be regular and normal. So thank you incredibly. It's with that, I'm learning how to address, how do we end our nuclear dependency, and that I understand it's a question with a lot of depth, and it takes a lot of effort and coordination, throughout the state and throughout the country, basically. And, what we're going to go through in the next few years, what can be those steps? I hope the previous person, Mr. Dupree, really nicely described, I felt, how do we talk about our future of nuclear, and compared to the question of renewables, and how do we start to build our financing and our trading on the ideas of renewables and on our trading with other local community energy groups. I think that's an important concept we have to consider, and maybe that's the kind of things to consider by 2023. How do we start trading with our local community friends and partners? I don't know if that's but I know that's something of the original ideas of local community energy, but it's not really talked about here. We're still kind of cemented to PG&E and all that still. Is that by 2023, is that the time to start talking about that more? I guess just thank you again. By January, hopefully, or at least by November, we should understand where PG&E will be thinking. And that would be helpful for us to then consider issues. And, you're trying for the best. I should mention that San Jose, they've made some really interesting efforts for the past several years now to leave natural gas. And it seems like you're making those efforts as well. To not be beholden to natural gas companies could possibly be an amazing tool to have. it invites a clarity of thinking about how to deal with the future of fracking and natural gas. And that's what San Jose has been doing. It seems like you're doing that as well. So thank you very much for your work.
Thank you, Blair. Stephanie, do we have any other public comment?
There are no other speakers.
Great. So I'm going to open it up to the committee. I see Ernie has his hand up, and Cynthia, because I can't have
Yes.
the ability to see you raise your hand. I don't know if you have a comment. I see Ernie.
Yes, I do.
and then
Yes,
you
I do.
Okay, so we'll go Ernie, Cynthia, and then Anna Olivia.
Okay, thanks, Mary. So this is an informational item for us, so I can't propose a motion for the CAC to vote on to send to the board, but a couple thoughts, and I'd ask the chair to communicate two of them. I think it makes sense long-term, and by long, this is not really long-term, within 3 or 4 years for the default product to be for there to only be 2 products, Renewable 100 and the default product, and that we concentrate on getting the default product as green as fast as we can. In the interim, though, due to the situations we're dealing with, I think it makes sense to provide a subsidy with the 1 or 2 year sunset for Brilliant 100. That would not include nuclear. I have been advocating for, unsuccessfully so far, at least to even get it on the staff report. I haven't talked to staff about this. I would like to see, and this is something I would like to see communicated by the chair to the board, please, is consideration of another option, which is a price parity product, and that the carbon-free content be what it is at price parity, which would be higher than Bright Choice and obviously lower than 100, the mid or high 60s. But I think that should be an option that is presented for the board to consider. The second thing I would ask to be communicated to the board is, I haven't seen the staff report or heard in the discussion, and if I'm wrong in this understanding, staff can correct me, is that should the board, should any city accept the Diablo Canyon allocation, that assuming that the conditions for a future proffer are the same as the last, it would require that city, and I think actually the entire agency, to surrender the war of addressing Diablo Canyon's inclusion in the PCIA, which I think is a third of the PCIA. And I think that's an important point, that, for those members that are considering accepting this Diablo Canyon proffer, that they would be giving up their right to try to remove Diablo Canyon from the PCIA. And I think that's an important point for their consideration. So I would ask those 2 points be communicated. One for an option that's at price parity and whatever carbon-free content that is, and then also making the observation that acceptance by anyone, by any city of a Diablo Canyon proffer would prohibit the agency itself, and certainly that city, from contesting the PCIA, the Diablo Canyon inclusion in the PCIA. Thank you.
So Ernie, I can talk about these things in the chair report. This item is a consent item, and what you're talking about, we're going to have all next month to talk about it, because in November is when the actual discussion in terms of a rate or what they're going to do with Brilliant 100 is going to come in front of the board for action. Right now, this is just we're going to keep Brilliant 100 for another month. That's the only thing this is about today. But I mean, I understand and hear what you're saying, and I can try and put these types of things in there, because I think what you'd like to have happen is to hear those, that type of information from staff when they present to the board in November. So
yes.
Okay. Cynthia, and then
Yes.
Anna Olivia, and then Monica.
Yes, on that note, I know it's probably not the time on the agenda yet, but I'd like to see this item brought back to the CAC next month, so we could discuss that prior to it going to the board for prior to it going to the board. What I wanted to say is, I think this is a good staff report. I sat in on the executive committee on September 25th. I think it's clear in general that there is opposition to nuclear power. But beyond that, we don't have all the factors to make a decision yet. So I think it's very prudent that the recommendation that we continue the rate until January 31st, because as the memo says, we don't even know whether PG&E will offer a carbon-free allocation, because that decision may not be made until the end of the month. So it would be premature to make a decision prior, I think, to January 31st. Additionally, what will be the change in the PCIA when the cap is removed? That is another cost consideration, and I don't think that has been resolved yet either. And lastly, which is at the bottom of page 1, what will be the PG&E rates in 2021? So I think for all those reasons, I think it's very premature, for a decision to have been made on, in the October meeting. So I think the extension is the appropriate decision to make. Also, I would like to go back to what Jessica said in public comment. I would like to see since this item, I am going to request it at the end of the meeting that this item be brought back to the CAC in November. I would like to see continue to offer Brilliant 100 product at RPS Renewables plus the remaining percentage large hydro for a combined 100% carbon free. I would like to see if we don't use, I would like to see how much it would cost if we had renewables in there as opposed to large hydro, what the additional cost might be. So if we could get an estimate of that for the next CAC meeting. And I believe I heard this correctly, East Bay Community Energy, I know we want to be very fiscally prudent in our early stages of, opening, but we did produce a good profit last year, and I believe we were 22 million over the projected profit. And so if we had to subsidize the energy in Albany, and I believe it's Hayward, and I know that if other cities chose, let's say they didn't choose nuclear, which I hope they don't, but if we had to extend the subsidies to the new cities that are coming aboard, anyways, there was a cost of $3 million mentioned to subsidize Albany and Hayward. Maybe we do have enough monies to subsidize the other cities, as opposed to adding nuclear into the energy portfolio. So I would like to see an additional cost analysis for those cities, even though I know they haven't chosen yet what their product is going to be. I mean, whether they're going to accept nuclear or not. But I think our budget is very sound, and I think I think there is a strong sense that the community is leery of nuclear energy. We would prefer to move into the 21st century with renewables to the extent that we can afford it. Okay, thank you.
You're on mute, Mary.
Mary?
You're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. I want to remind the committee that all of the points that you're talking about, while valid, are not part of this item. And we're going to have next month to talk about it. It's going to come up. We are going to be able to talk about it. We have about 50 minutes worth of agenda still left. It's close to 7:23. Granted, those might take enough time, but I want you to consider that as you put forward your comments, because I think that this discussion item will be put forward next month, and we'll have a lot of time. I think, we'll make sure that we have enough time to talk about it then. The other thing I will note is that as the CAC, we cannot request staff to do any analysis. That is the purview of the board. And I will also indicate, we can express it. I think staff have heard it. It is truly up to them. I'm going to have one more comment to say after Anna Olivia, and then I'd like to close this item and move on. Anna Olivia?
Thank you. As this is an informational item, I just did want to request something, but as a point of clarification, as a Brown Act appointed advisory body, we can request information from staff, but as is typical in all Alameda County Brown Act appointed advisory bodies. So, which is different than a directive, quite clearly.
Thank you.
I just wanted to note that on the options that have been presented to date, there were 2 that were missing. One of them, Member Pacheco mentioned, and the other one was to offer a product at cost parity, who helped contribute towards local development. And so I would just want to see those included as part of the past options discussed. I've brought it up so that just because it says these are the options we've talked about in the past, I would just want those 2 included. And that was the extent of my comment.
I try and type and then I mute myself. Can you remind me, what were those 2, Anna Olivia? One was missing was to offer a project at cost parity that includes what?
So the 2 other things that had been mentioned, and this really shouldn't take long, were what Member Pacheco said, which was offering a product at cost parity that just had as much GHG free as we could get, which is what he said in the first comment. And the one that I had brought up a few times was offering a product at cost parity that was local in focus. So even though it wasn't 100% local, the funds went towards local development, right? Not exclusive, but just something along those lines, as there were other options. We asked staff that last time and they said yes, that it had been a consideration. And just because that list of what has been offered as options was incomplete. That was all.
Okay, thank you. The one comment, I guess, Monica, you raised your hand. So you, and then I'll finish up and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I want to be sensitive to the time issue. So I'll just make my comment in support of the resolution that staff has put forward. And also want to note that I do not support, although I do support it in this instance, a subsidization between rate classes or between product offerings. And I would hope that the discussion that the staff has with the board or I guess even with us next month, would include the kind of merits of each of the options that have been put forth in that memo, the 4 options, including what the cost would be to acquire sufficient resources to meet those offerings.
Thank you, Monica. So my one comment to folks and the CAC is I was listening into the city of Albany recently, and they were discussing this item, and it was interesting to hear what they had to say. So I would encourage everybody on the committee to go back to your constituents and at least have a conversation with them to hear what they're thinking. Now, for some folks, it may be pretty clear. Berkeley, if you're a Berkeley person, you know, they're pretty clear. But I would encourage that the CAC actually go back and check in with their constituents. So when we have a discussion next week, we can clearly talk about it. And I will give kudos to Cynthia because she's already done it and she's got that letter that they put together. So.
Can I just say one thing, please? Mary, please. What Monica said was, I think she said it better than I, because I want to be able to look at various costs and analysis for, you know, to make a clearer decision. I wasn't, you know, giving any directive. I just, you know, it was a request for information so I could be better informed of the options, because part of the options, of course, is cost. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Cynthia. All right, so we're going to move on to item C7, which is EBCE's participation in an arrearage management program. This is an action item for us. I'd like to be able to go back and provide the board with our thoughts in terms of whether this appears to be a positive program for EBCE or our thoughts on it. So who's presenting for us?
I'll be presenting. This is Fabi.
Great.
And I have a presentation. I think Stephanie's pulling it up currently. Do you all see that?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so I'll go ahead and just dive right in. Stephanie, I'll inform you when, if you could just go back to that first slide, and then I'll inform you when to change. Oh, yes, no, sorry. The first slide being the first content slide. So I'll be discussing the Arrearage Management Program Plan, also known as AMP. I've also brought in my colleague, Kelly Brezovic. She should also be, yes, you could also see her, Senior Manager of Customer Care or Account Services, and will be supporting some of the question and answers as it pertains to bill impacts and customer-facing operations. So just to give a little bit of context to begin, on behalf of EBCE, I've been following and managing CPUC's Decision 2006-003. This is also known as the disconnections decision or disconnections proceeding. And the aim here is to reduce residential disconnections and high arrears due to non-payment of electric services. And under the disconnection decision, there are 2 programs. One of them is the Arrearage Management Program. So this has been approved by the Commission, and PG&E intends to roll out this program in November, so just a couple of weeks here. And I'm going to present some of the program structure and the eligibility requirements. So you could see here that a customer who is on CareFera, a residential customer, would be eligible for the AMP program if they are a customer with PG&E for a minimum of 6 months, makes at least one on-time payment in the past 2 years, and has an account balance or an arrearage, also known as a debt, of at least $500 in arrears. So this is both on the electric and gas side. PG&E, and I'll show a table on the next slide in just a moment, proposed in a working group. So we have been coordinating working groups with PG&E and some other external stakeholders, such as TURN and other stakeholders, such as the CPUC Energy Division staff. And during this proposal, PG&E proposed about 5,800 customers to be eligible for the arrearage management program. We are confirming that number on our side. We have requested a data request to PG&E to confirm those arrearage and disconnection numbers. So you may have questions about what the actual program is. So the arrearage management plan is essentially a 12-month payment plan in which the customer would sign on to or enroll. And if you make one on-time monthly payment, a 12th of the customer's arrearage would be forgiven. And if a customer makes an on-time payment, makes 12 on-time payments, so within that year, the pre-existing debt will be fully forgiven. Something to note is that the customer can miss 2 non-sequential payments. So for example, if a customer missed February payment and then another payment in July, those are non-sequential payments. They would still be on the AMP program. But if they missed a payment in February and in March, then they would be dropped from the program. And what is important to note here is that the customer would have to make up, if they missed a February bill, they would have to make up the February payment and the March payment in the March bill. And then again, IOUs, particularly PG&E, has expected to enroll customers starting in November 2020, specifically November 11th, 2020. We can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so this was the table I had referenced. So we have been working really closely with other stakeholders, as I had mentioned, and PG&E provided a table which showed us the expected number of eligible customers, the total eligible debt balance in EBCE service area, and the estimated AMP debt forgiveness based on the percentage of customers participating, assuming that 50% of those enrolled customers complete the arrearage program. So something to note here is that we have about 5,800 customers to enroll. We also, EBCE service area has the highest number of customers eligible for the arrearage management program compared to the other CCAs in PG&E service area. This is an important note because the recommendation that we are asking for the CAC and the board to approve is to proceed with the arrearage management program if the commission gives us a thumbs up, essentially, to move forward with the PPPC, also known as the Public Programs Purpose Charge, a socialized cost recovery mechanism, and we can use that cost recovery mechanism to forgive the arrearage and the debt. So I think, yes, so as you can see here, for example, if just to clarify some of the captions here, so 30% of eligible customers participate in EBCE service area, and if 50% of those customers complete the arrearage program, then we are looking at $500K debt forgiveness that we would have to cover. And then so of course that number increases the more customers that participate. And then I can move on to my last slide and happy to answer any questions. So I'll start with the recommendation actually, where EBCE staff has advocated for this program since the start of the disconnection decision. We think it's a viable program that can really give customers a fresh start if they are on track. And we would like to participate in the CPUC approved AMP program, provided that the CPUC approves a cost recovery approach similar to PPPC or one that is socialized amongst all customers. To go back to the discussion piece, this is important because PG&E has filed an advice letter in which CCAs such as EBCE needs to inform PG&E of our intent to participate in the arrearage management program by this Friday. And so we are most likely, with the approval from, of course, the CAC and the board, to inform them if we would like to participate or not, and would recommend to participate if cost is recovered through a socialized mechanism. And I think that's what I have for this evening. Just actually one thing before we go right into it. The purpose of us asking for guidance through the board and for this to be an action item by the board and the CAC is because once we hear the commission's direction or guidance, if let's say cost is through PPPC, we can immediately inform PG&E about our participation, in which we would get customers, EBCE customers, to participate in this program within 45 days of our notification. So we want to just be proactive as possible and not wait for another board meeting, but let's do that now so that we can ensure we can give these customers the benefits as soon as we hear direction from the commission.
Great, thank you, Phoebe.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Stephanie, do we have any public comment on this item?
Yes, I have Jessica Tovar and Blair Beekman.
Great, Jessica, are you ready to go first this time?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much, Phoebe, for that presentation on the AMP program. I'm not well versed in everything in its entirety, but I was part of some of, I heard some of the discussions at CPUC level about this program. There is an aspect of the program that I am concerned about, particularly the aspect that says, if somebody can pay their bill on time for 12 months, then, they will potentially forgive their debt, I guess the COVID debt or whatever debt was they've had from previous. And that particular piece is concerning for me because I feel like it sets people up who are really struggling and might benefit people who are not not struggling. And so I have concerns about that. I don't think that that's a very strong aspect of the program. And I think the other point to add to that is that I think the statistic is that there's about 35% or so of households or individuals who are eligible for the CareFair program but are not enrolled. And so I feel like they fall under that. It sounds like they fall under that that scenario. So I think, of course, we support, as East Bay Clean Power Alliance, support a program that would help alleviate debt and alleviate, prevent shutoffs of people's power, especially during this time. But is there something more that East Bay Community Energy could do that is a step more beyond this program through the CPUC? So that's my question for staff. And I do know that another, it has been brought up about creating this like potential shutoff prevention fund that's similar to the SMUD program. And I think, yeah, I want to hear more about if that's something that's still being considered, because I think we could be doing more than what the CPUC is proposing. And I highly recommend that because it's certainly needed now more than ever. But just to say that the debt that people have been, dealing with, there are some households, families, individuals that have been dealing with that way before we hit the shutdown because of the pandemic. So I just want to emphasize that East Bay Community Energy should try to do more. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Can I get a quick clarification from you? Because as we talk about this, while I hear you saying that you want to do more, does that mean that you're against the AMP or that you want to do AMP plus?
I think the AMP plus is necessary, to be very honest, because that aspect that I mentioned of having to make payments on time for a year in order to get forgiveness is really not feasible for people. So that's why I added that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. And was it Blair, Stephanie, that is our other comment?
Yes, Blair is the other speaker. Blair, you are unmuted.
Hi, thank you. You know, in reading over the sheet a bit, the memo, I had kind of the same feeling that the previous speaker just offered. And the way I thought of it personally was that if you were a part of a certain tier, the plan can possibly work for you. And if you're not, then you're left out. And the person described nicely that, you know, the AMP program may be good in one way to add an additional sense of protection. That's maybe what's needed. And, you know, in this time of COVID, we're really trying to address the ideas of subsidy. And good luck in your efforts to do that. I know, you know, the East Bay, to me, I'm from the South Bay, and the East Bay has done a really nice job to address subsidy and to make people feel really comfortable with the situation and what they can expect, and that they don't have to kind of be at each other's throats in order to get services, and you know, have safety nets. And it's a bit more competitive and capitalistic in the South Bay, unfortunately, but we're catching up. The South Bay does do a good job at catching up, and I think they're relying on basically on the East Bay to, you know, Alameda County cities and government to, you know, they've had an interesting way to deal with COVID. I hope you can keep up those efforts. And what I failed to mention from the previous item is that you're going to have to talk about with Brilliant 100 subsidy ideas with the CPUC. You're going to have to convince the CPUC about the subsidy programs and process, and about the overall need of carbon-free energy. And so, you know, I understand the chairperson's previous words about being specific about Brilliant 100, how we talk about the item. And I think what she meant is how to, you know, we have to be prepared and coordinate how the use of nuclear, basically. And we can't just totally be negative on nuclear, because we have to sell that nuclear to other places at this next year. But I think what we also have to describe and to convincing the CPUC is that we are questioning how to exactly end nuclear. And while we can sell some in this next upcoming year, we also are trying to consider how to leave it altogether. And that has to be hopefully part of the equation. It's a lot to balance and explain. And I hope we can all work on that balance together and find a good balance, how to talk to other places, what we want to accomplish. Besides that, yeah. So good luck with the subsidy programs. How do we talk about subsidies fairly? And that can be decent-minded and not fearful or like some kind of con job. I mean, people are really hurting at this time with practices that, am I out of time? I'm out of time. I'm sorry. I will speak on the next item as a legislative item. And thank you.
Great. Thank you, Blair. Stephanie, do we have any other public comment?
We have no other speakers.
Great. I'm going to open it up to the CAC. I see Monica, your hand's been up for a while, so I don't know if that's for this item or.
I think I forgot to take it down, but
okay.
I can talk.
Only if you want to say something.
Yeah, I certainly support staff's recommendation on this, and I'm willing to make a motion unless there's a whole lot of discussion wanting to be had. But I can make the motion anyway.
Go ahead. I don't see any other hands. I know.
Cynthia. Oh yes, my hand is up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was just going to check in with you, Cynthia. I know that she can't, but I think we can have discussion at that point. Actually, I'm going to say, Cynthia, go ahead and say, and then I'd like to come back to you, Monica, for a motion.
Okay. I am generally supportive of the arrearage management program. Besides being an SEIU 1021 executive board member, I also am a social worker that works with our safety net population in Alameda County. And I know we can't change necessarily what the program is about. I do have a concern on bullet point 3. Customer can miss 2 non-sequential payments, but it needs to be made up in the next bill, plus their current bill. So they would be paying both the arrears and the current bill. And, that might even be a high bar for those of us that are working. So I just think, I don't know if there's a way of somehow giving more time to pay the arrears up, added to the current bill. I just think that's a very high bar when you talk about low-income folks. So I just want to bring that to the staff's attention. Secondly, I think I heard that we have not, and I don't think it's our responsibility, but we have customers in our base that are not currently CARE or FERA residential customers that may meet the qualifications of that program, and I believe it's a 30% discount. So can we outreach to those customers? And that's probably not part of this part of the action item tonight. But I would like us to outreach to those customers or work with PG&E more to reach out to that customer base. So
Great.
That's it.
Thank you, Cynthia. I will say, I'm going to ask either Phoebe or Kelly. I'm pretty sure that this AMP program can't be adjusted given where we are in this. Kelly's going, no, I was pretty sure about that. But I think that the suggestion that Jessica made is really put forward as an AMP plus. Is there what other things we could do in advance in addition to that might be helpful. The other thing is I am aware that EBCE has done pretty extensive outreach in trying to get people on CARE and FERA, but it looks like both Phoebe and Kelly are nodding. So I think it's ongoing. I think that this has been something that staff have been aware about for quite a while and have been really pushing. I mean, I've seen ads on it in different places, and that means, and I don't go very many places in terms of the internet or anything. So anyway, so Cynthia, I guess my point is I think that the things that you're suggesting are really good, and I think that it is moving forward to the extent it can.
Right, and I want to thank the staff for doing the outreach. Also, but it's continuing. It's continuing outreach. So thank you.
Great. So I'd like to go back to Monica and give me a motion.
Okay, I move approval of staff's recommendation to approve a resolution. And I'm going to try to reread it, but I just lost it. I had it up. Do you want me to repeat?
Well, this is what I have, Monica. I have that the CAC supports EBCE's participation in the plan, but feel that other customer protections need to be provided.
in addition.
In addition.
And I'll second it.
But the motion is to support the resolution now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So long as that's what the motion is, that is my motion.
Yep. And so I heard
I second it. This is Cynthia Landry.
seconded.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Seeing no hands, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Certainly. Eldred,
Yes.
Landry,
Yes.
Pacheco,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Sutter.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. We are on our second to last item, and I am almost there. This is an informational item for us. It is a legislative update, and this was at the request of the CAC members to kind of be kept abreast of some of the things that are happening and have happened. I think as many of you who are involved in this know, the legislative sessions have ended, the governor's signing and not signing a variety of things. So we're hoping to hear an update on where things stand. Who's presenting that for us?
I'm going to be presenting.
Great, thank you.
Stephanie, can you pull up the slides? Thank you. This was a legislative update that was also provided at our last board meeting. So first, next slide. So as probably surprises no one, this legislative session was dominated by the response to COVID-19. I think first and foremost, a significant chunk of the legislative session was actually lost as a result of quarantine and shelter in place. It was only, perhaps 6 to 8 weeks into the session, they started to adapt some of their regulations around allowing, say, virtual meetings. And Senate and Assembly and the leadership, as well as the governor, all were very clear that any bill that did not very directly deal with COVID-19 relief and response should be largely deferred. So in that context, many of the pieces of legislation that we were tracking ended up being pushed to consideration at some point in the future. And so many of them, whether it's central buyer of resource adequacy or direct access or PCIA, all these matters were deferred, presumably to this next legislative session, but we're still waiting to determine whether or not there's going to be much in the way of legislative work beyond COVID again, given that we're still very much in the midst of the pandemic. That being said, there were a couple issues that did have relevance to EVC. One of them was related to EV infrastructure budget. So the major policy items that were not directly COVID related that were considered all had to be related to the budget. And if you recall, this past summer, we included money in our local development plan for matching funds for the EVIP program that is managed out of the CEC. So because we are expecting a grant from that program, we worked with our legislative constituency and other CCAs to support the CEC's efforts to secure $51 million in budget allocation, which was successful. On other energy issues, PG&E bankruptcy remained a major area of focus. One bill was SB 917, which was introduced to take over PG&E, but that bill did not proceed. The one bill that did pass was SB 350, which creates a framework for state-run backstop should PG&E eventually fold or go into bankruptcy again. Next slide, please. In terms of themes, energy themes that were discussed but did not proceed, among them were long duration energy storage. That's a topic that has taken, I think, even more precedence after the heat storms of August and September and the rolling blackouts. There was a bill to put in some requirements for the procurement of long duration, but that did fail. If you recall, at the beginning of this year, central procurement was one of our legislative priorities. Both bills, the creation of a central procurement entity that the EBC and CCAs more broadly oppose, AB 56, as well as this Cal CCA supported and sponsored bill AB 3014, which would create a central procurement entity with that's backstop in nature. Those did have some initial hearing, but again, both were tabled once the severity of COVID-19 became apparent. Microgrid bills do continue to be an area of quite a bit of discussion, particularly anything that relates to dealing with wildfires and public safety power shutoffs. And there were multiple bills there. One bill that EBC was somewhat involved in that did pass was SB 364, which would have created a carve out for utility scale solar projects should Prop 15 pass. Prop 15 would split the property tax rolls such that commercial properties would no longer have the legacy property tax treatment where property taxes don't change, short of a transfer of ownership. So this would create a carve out. So utility scale solar projects are not seeing significant relative property tax increases, thus potentially changing the economics of those projects.
Hey, Nick, can I ask real quick? It says Prop 13 there, but you're saying Prop 15. Is it the proposition that's on the ballot right now?
So Prop 15 would reform Prop 13.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I just didn't understand. I was
looking at it like, I think I understand where it's coming from because it's Prop 15 would undo part of Prop 13.
Okay, thank you.
And there was an effort by Assemblyman Gallagher to suspend the RPS as part of the efforts to respond to COVID-19. This bill, though, was quickly quashed by the Assembly's Utility and Energy Committee. Next slide, please. The major action that we've seen really in the last month or two on the legislative front have been the oversight hearings in response to the August blackouts and the CPUC, CAISO, and California Energy Commission root cause analysis study. This hearing was held actually this past Monday, where there was quite some discussion of the root causes, among them extreme heat. I think that was one of the major themes for the energy agencies was the unforeseen and extreme nature of the heat storm that California experienced. These were the hottest days that have ever been recorded in history, all of history, even geological history. And so, the planning paradigm for the energy agencies did not really account for that level of heat and the persistence of that heat across the state. There's going to be a lot of work in the near term, the next number of months around trying to determine what the major solutions should be. One of the assumptions is that there's going to be a lot of energy storage procurement that is mandated. And so, one of the major areas that EBC and the CCAs in general are going to make sure to work on is to not allow that those procurements to become mandates for the utilities to buy things on behalf of CCAs and then recover those costs from our customers. We really want to make sure that we have the ability to procure to meet the requirements for our customers. And then for next session, I think we believe that all of the major themes that were top of mind at the beginning of last session are going to come back. Central procurement, long duration energy storage, some further discussion around PCIA, and then certainly microgrids and distributed generation. Next slide. This might be it, actually. Okay. Nope. Okay. I think I've sort of touched on these points, but at this point, the governor has signed or vetoed every bill. In terms of the major highlights for EBC were the signing of the budget bill that included the $51 million for EVIP funding, the exclusion of solar from the property tax reform, and a bill to support utility deployment of EV installation infrastructure, which is AB 841. What I'll say here is, while it did not explicitly support CCA efforts, any CCA EV infrastructure will very likely require some upgrades to the utility grid, and so I think in general we are supportive of those deployment requirements, especially as long as they don't put any barriers to CCA participation in the EV infrastructure itself that is then connecting to the utility system. Next slide, please. Okay, I think that's it.
Great. Thank you, Nick. This is an informational item for us. Stephanie, do we have any public comments?
Yes, I have Blair Beekman.
Okay, Blair.
Hi, thank you. To try to conclude from my words from my previous public comment, yeah, I'm just hoping that we can develop soft ways to talk about the subsidy issues. That's important to me. I don't think it's a way to cheat ourselves out of things at this time. I feel the ideas of COVID, to be really honest, can have real man-made beginnings and possibilities surrounding it, and more than just from China. And so I think we have to be, we've been at the state level incredibly compassionate about that, and realize that it's not the fault of people at the local levels, and they should not have to be bearing the costs and debt burden process that COVID is putting us through. And I think if we, can talk to each other that this is just a few year process we're going to have to live with, and we can be out of it in a few years, I think that can help, comfort the situation, what can be expected. I think, things like AB 3088 from California that was eventually passed, the housing measure, it fell way short of what people like David Chu and Ash Kalra from San Jose, they were working on, really well this summer. They were doing incredibly important, good ideas about, that were bipartisan ideas, that were ideas from all sides. And they were crafting a compromise bill of all sides that I felt was incredibly important work that got shortchanged and compromised, and it leaves people in trouble and in debt and in worry and in panic of the court system. It leaves people the right to sue. When David Chu and Ash Kalra were working towards a system where we can all have a guarantee and all can have a sense of safety in the next few years. And it was asking we work together in harmony instead of keeping us separated and apart and distant and wanting to sue each other. and competitive. And so they were doing a beautiful thing. And we have to continue those efforts into the next year, because I've been hearing that the foreclosure issue will be coming up again by next summer, and economic questions. So I think we're all understanding that the Democratic Party at the national level can really help facilitate what can be a good process in the next couple years of how to work these systems that are that can be really helpful. And so I'm compassionate. That's the word, compassionate. And I hope we can be doing that and thinking about compassion and how to talk about the subsidy issues in the next few years, and it can be a safe process. And I think I'm about done. So thanks for all your time today.
Thank you, Blair. Stephanie, do we have any other public comment?
We have no other speakers to this item, no.
Great. I see Ernie, your hand is up. Do you have any thoughts, questions?
Yeah, yes, no, I do have a question for next year's legislative actions by EBCE and other CCAs. So I guess a clarification, if EBCE accepts a nuclear Diablo Canyon allotment under a proffer that's similar to the conditions that PG&E has already offered, would that preclude us from being part of a legislative play to carve out or adjust Diablo Canyon's part or component of the PCIA? And would it also inhibit us or preclude us from working with Cal CCA or any other organizations on a legislative or regulatory play to address?
So there's nothing in any allocation of Diablo Canyon that currently limits our ability to work on the PCIA. There's no exclusion. So there would be no exclusion going forward either. We are fully able to litigate Diablo Canyon costs in the PCIA and also pursue whatever remedies we and or Cal CCAC fit in the legislature.
Okay, thank you. And just to make clear from my understanding, that's if PG&E proffers this proffer under the same conditions that it already did and we accepted.
But my point is, I think that's perhaps a misunderstanding of the conditions. That there is no condition that limits our ability to litigate in the context of the PCIA.
Okay, thank you.
Anna Olivia?
Thank you. That was great. I have a lot of hope for some of these bills coming back. It's really cool that the EV infrastructure was approved with how badly we need to make electric vehicles feasible for people to use. So really exciting to see that. Thank you for being on top of it and really going after that. I am curious what changed around that when this was switching topic to the nuclear front. I am curious what changed. JP definitely informed us that it would impact our ability to challenge the inclusion of Diablo Canyon in the PCAA. In reading I no longer remember what it's called, but in reading the actual thing from PG&E, it stated in there that we would not be able to challenge it. So I'm just wondering when that changed or how it changed.
I think the reference is not to Diablo Canyon. It has to do with in the era, there's a treatment of carbon-free energy. So there are a whole suite of costs associated with Diablo Canyon that have nothing to do with the allocation. And those are frankly, the vast majority of the drivers of the PCIA have to do with things like operations and maintenance expense. And so I think
I believe it spoke specifically to inclusion of utility-owned generation and a time frame. It has been some time since I've actually read it, but we were told and then confirmed at least 3 separate meetings that accepting the allocation would prohibit our ability to challenge, while it does not say Diablo Canyon specifically, challenge the inclusion of utility-owned generation or the thing from this time frame inside of the PCIA.
That is inaccurate. So I'm not sure where I was not at least
Cool.
part of those discussions. So but that's not true that there's a prohibition on challenging.
You were not at the meeting. That was JP.
So
okay, cool. I'll try and look up that thing and send it to you for clarification in case I'm misstating it, but that would be great.
yeah.
That's all.
No limitation.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on this item? If not, I'm gonna move us to the next one.
Just very briefly, Mary, I wanted to, SB, the 350 Hill, I know that PG&E is not folding up yet, but I was curious, Nick, if you could, how would that affect, or how would that potentially affect, just a brief thumbnail, how that would potentially impact EBCE should, PG&E no longer, be an investor-owned company and now be run by the state. So can you just say something about that briefly, please?
I think the challenge is it's a framework, so it's pretty light on detail. The primary outcome is it creates a process whereby if PG&E were to return to bankruptcy, I believe it streamlines the state's ability to take over operations and control of the company.
Okay.
But it doesn't have a lot of detail in it, so it wouldn't give you a clear sense of if this, then that. If it's a framework, so even for that to be actualized, there's a lot of work and presumably a lot of legal wrangling that's going to have to occur.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Cynthia?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks all. I'm going to close item C8, move to item C9, which is CAC member and staff announcements, including any request to place items on future CAC agendas. Cynthia, I do have your request already to talk about this Brilliant 100. That was definitely going to be on anyway. Anything else? And actually, let me get to where I can see hands. If I see no hands. So with that, I'm going to call this meeting adjourned, 8:14. Thank you all. Our next meeting is November, and I have to get to that one again. So I forgot, November 16th. Monday, November 16th, 6 p.m. via Zoom. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Mary.
All right, thank you.
Bye.